Hey there, hope everyone's well. Everybody showed a lot of interest in the design that I did for the absolute key to occult science from the Tarot of the Bohemians. So I'm going to try to explain this in a very straightforward and comprehensive way. So the first thing to understand is what Pythagoras called the Tetractus. Uh, what it is a series of dots in ascending order. So the first row has one dot, the second row has two dots, the third row has three dots, and the fourth row has four dots. And what this actually is how the ancient people perceived what a number was. So it's very crucial to understand that when the ancient peoples thought of numbers and they asked themselves, what is four? Obviously, I mean, we know one, two, three, four. You know, I have four trees or uh, four shirts or whatever. But what really is four itself? And so that is what the Tetractus represents. So just to make sure everybody's clear, because this is a pretty important topic, the Theosophic edition of 4 is 1, 2, 3, and 4, or the number of dots in a Tetractus of 4 rows, which is 10. So if you wanted to do 7, same thing. You would do 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, and that is 28. So if I were to say, what is the theosophic addition of 7, or what is 7, it would look like this tetractus of 7 rows, and it would have a theosophic value of 28. So there's a really good chance people have already heard of theosophic reduction. All you got to do is add the digits of the numbers and reduce them down to one singular digit. So for instance, the theosophical reduction of 18 would be 1 plus 8 or 9. The theosophic reduction of 19 would be 1 plus 9, which is 10. But since it's also a double digit number, we have to do it again. So 1 plus 0 is 1. So we could say that the number 19 reduces back to 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. That's theosophic reduction. All right, so you're probably wondering, what was that all about? I mean, why do I care about math? Well, that's all the math that we have to deal with, at least those two principles. So now what we're going to talk about are the numbers 1 through 4 and how that connects to what's called the Tetragrammaton. What that is it's the name of God in Hebrew. It's Yod, He, Vav, and He. So what I'm going to read to you is directly from the book, The Tarot of the Bohemians. And Papus is talking about the letters in that name. So he starts with the Yod, the first letter of the Tetragrammaton. Reminder, Hebrew is read from right to left, unlike English. So he starts to talk about the unity, the number 1. The Yod is going to connect to the actual number 1. as it is the first letter of the Tetragrammaton. So, Papus says, quote, "The Kabbalah therefore places at the origin of all things an absolute assertion of the being by itself of the ego unity, which is represented by the yod symbolically, and by the number 10, that is the Gematria value of the letter yod. This number 10 representing the all principle, the 1, with the 0, nothing, or 0. 1, 0 is 10. He says this well supplies the requisite conditions." So that's the yod. Now he talks about the hey. He says, quote, "But the ego cannot be realized except through its opposition to the non-ego. The assertion of the ego is scarcely established when we must instantly realize a reaction of the ego, absolute, upon itself, from which the conception of its existence will be drawn, by a kind of division of the unity. This is the origin of duality, of opposition, of the binary, the image of femininity, even as the unity is the image of the masculine. 10 divided by itself in opposition to itself," what he's saying is 10 divided by 2, is 5. The exact number or gematria value of the Hebrew letter He, the second letter of the great sacred name. So what he's saying here is the idea of the duality. He's saying, if I say I am blue, if I say that I am blue, that automatically, without saying anything else, means that I cannot be red. If I say I am blue, I am automatically not red. So to state that something is secures the existence of another condition that that same thing is not something else. The vowel, which is the third letter, he says, quote, "But the opposition of the ego and the non-ego immediately give rise to another factor. This is the affinity existing between this ego and non-ego. Now the vowel, the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, produced by 10 plus 5, that equals 15, but if you remember theosophic reduction that we just talked about, 15 can be reduced to 6. 5 plus 1 is 6. This signifies link or analogy. It is the link which, uniting antagonisms in the whole of nature, constitutes the third word of this mysterious trinity." What he's saying simply is you have the duality itself. So to be also means to not be something else. And it is that special connection between the two that defines the third, the affinity as he calls it. But probably an easier example would be, you have a father, you have a mother, and then they come together to form a child. And this is even shown in his way he does the math. The yod has the Hebrew number of 10. The He has the Hebrew number of 5. So the yod and the He, or the masculine and the feminine, together, 15 reduces to 6, which is what he's saying. And so these are actually the gematria equals of the numbers carrying this pattern forward. It even has a carryover, I guess you could say, in such a simple way. You have 1, which represents the masculine, 2, which represents the feminine, and then 1 plus 2 is 3. And so 3 represents the vow, or the affinity between the ego and the non-ego, or the neutral or neuter part of the series. And that neuter, if we're going to look at it from father, mother, child, well, the father is a male, the mother is a female, but they could have a boy or they could have a girl. We don't know. Could be either. So it's a neutral It's a zero or a null charge. Okay, and he finishes out with the second hey. He says, quote, "Nothing can exist beyond this Trinity, considered as a law. The Trinity is the synthetic and absolute formula to which all the sciences converge, and this formula, forgotten with regard to its scientific value, has been transmitted to us integrally by all the religious of the world, the unconscious depositaries of the science wisdom of primitive civilizations. Thus, the great sacred name is formed of 3 letters only. The fourth term of the name is formed by the repetition of the second letter, the hey. Remember, yod, hey, vow, hey. So the hey is repeated. There's 2 heys. This repetition indicates the passage of the Trinitarian law into a new application. That is, to speak correctly, a transition from the metaphysical to the physical world, or generally, of any world whatever to the world that immediately follows it. The knowledge of this property of the second hey is the key to the whole divine name, and every application of which it is susceptible. We shall presently see the proof of this statement. So this graphic right here is from a site called geonumerology.com. And I was very happy to find this because I think this helps people visually understand what's going on here. So we've explained the Kabbalistic background and we've explained what the triangular number, theosophic addition, theosophic reduction is. So what you're seeing here is simply how the number 1 represents just a point, a zero-dimensional object. Then 2, 3, and 4 go from a line to a triangle to a tetrahedron, which is a 3-dimensional object. So this is really what the Tetragrammaton represents. And we're going to show you the mathematical understanding, the mathematical proof next. So in the Tetragrammaton, you have yod as the first. So for the sake of explanation and for our system here, what we're going to do is we're going to say the yod in the Tetragrammaton represents the number 1, which is the point. Then the hey is going to represent the number 2, the line. The vow is going to represent the number 3, which will be the triangle, the 2-dimension. And then the second hey is 4, and that is the manifestation of our 3D tetrahedron. And what we're about to see is that 4 can be mathematically reduced back to 1, which means that after we have reached that 3-dimensional manifestation, that 3-dimensional manifestation then becomes a seed. It goes back to the whole, the monad. It becomes the starting point for this to happen again. And so that's like a fractal. So I wanted to show you this because I think this will make it very intuitive when I show you what I'm about to show you next. All right, so this is the recipe for manifestation. First, you need an active, masculine, male, the yod or the fire. This is just the man. 2, you need a female, passive, female, negative charge, the hay, water. This is our number 2. Number 3 is the neuter, the child, because the child can be a boy or a girl, so it's a neutral null charge. It is 2 plus 1 is 3. It is the air. And finally, 4 is our active manifest, rebirth. This is the second hay of the Tetragrammaton, and it is the earth element. So, the idea behind this is basically generativity. So, if you want to create a family, well, first you need a male to be the father. You need a female to be the mother. And then those two join, a man and a woman procreate. So we can literally see that as the number 1 plus the number 2 coming together. That is equal to the number 3. And so the number 3 is the affinity between your ego and your non-ego, or it is what happens when you bring a male and a female together. Obviously, the male has a phallus, which is the plus charge. The female has the womb, the receptive, negative, passive charge. Those two come together and they will have either a boy or a girl. So it is a neutral, null, zero charge. It is the product of the two. And so the 4 is literally the family, because once you have a mother, a father, and a child, then those 3 things together constitute and define the family unit. Let me give you another one. Proton, which has a positive charge, an electron, which has a negative charge, a neutron, which has a null or zero charge. The 4 is, once again, the atom itself. You have the dialectic, which is a problem, a reaction, a solution. 4 is the whole dialectic. So, why is this important? What is it with the 4? Well, I'm about to show you. 4 has a special property when we look at 4 as a triangular number, as I called theosophic addition, back to our Tetractus. It has 10 dots. So 1 plus 0, here's our reduction, is 1. Again, 4, when looked at as the Tetractus having 4 rows, has 10 dots total. Well, now using our reduction, 1 plus 0 is 1. And so that 4 has gone back to the monad, and 4 will be the starting point to the next series. So 4 is now our active, masculine, positive fire, our yod of the Tetragrammaton. 5 is our passive, feminine, water, hay of the Tetragrammaton. 6 is our neuter, our air element. And 7 is our active regeneration. So does this pattern apply to the number 7? Well, it does. Because if you take a Tetractus of 7 rows, that would be 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. That's how many dots there are. So a Tetractus of 7 rows has 28 dots. Let's reduce it. 8 plus 2 is 10. Well, seeing as it's still got 2 digits, we'll repeat. 1 plus 0 is 1. So 7 row Tetractus had 28 dots. 28 reduces to 10. 10 reduces to 1. So 7 also reduces back to 1, and it becomes the starting point to the next series. So I'll speed up a little bit now. 7 is our active. 8 is our passive. 9 is our air neutral. And then 10 should be our active regeneration. Well, 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 55. Reduce that. 5 plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. And it turns out that this pattern will repeat for all numbers forever to infinity. So 10 becomes the starting point. 11 is the feminine. 12 is the child, the neutral. 13 is our regeneration. And I will leave it to you to check the math, and you will find out that it does indeed return to 1. All right, guys, how you doing? Today we're going to continue on our absolute key to occult science. We're going to look at what's known as a septenary, which means the law of 7. It is the fundamental relationship um, with generativity and the number 7. This is why the creation week, as we're going to see, creation was done in 7 days, with 7 being the day of rest, the Sabbath. So this isn't going to be too long. I'm going to make this really simple. I think you guys will really understand this by the time it's all said and done. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the basis for a septenary, which means 7, results from the need for balance, polarity, and gender. If you see the Hermetic laws, the law of gender is that everything has a gender. Traditionally, the sun and the moon are the masculine and the feminine. And that's what they represent. If anybody's familiar with, like basic zodiac astrology and stuff, the sun is your conscious mind and the moon is your subconscious mind. So, with the established tetragrammaton called the quaternary model, because of the law of 4, uh, essentially all it's doing is taking that and doing it twice to establish a positive and a negative. So, a septenary, as you will see, the first quaternary, 1, 2, 3, and 4, as we've already reviewed. 1 is the active, the fire. 2 is the passive, the water. 3 is the neuter, which is the joining of 1 and 2, which is the air element. And 4 is the regeneration. Because as we looked at already, 4 can be reduced back to 1. And therefore it ends the first quaternary, but then it will begin the second quaternary. So the second quaternary begins with 4 as the active fire element. 5 is the passive water element. 6 is the neuter air element. And 7 is got that little icon because it is the regeneration, but it also is the first septenary. This is, as we're about to see, the creation week from Genesis. Yes, so the two act as an active quaternary and a passive, which means that the first is the masculine and the second is the feminine. So here is just a visualization. This was from the Tarot of the Bohemians by Papus. The 4 can be reduced back to 1 using the theosophic addition and reduction, as we've already looked at. So the theosophic addition, or the Tetractus with 10 dots, or 4 rows with 10 dots. And then since we have 10, that is reduced using the reduction. 1 plus 0 is 1. So this means that 4 ends the first quaternary, the first tetragrammaton series, and begins the next one. So when you visualize this or draw this, it looks like a triangle with correspondence to the letters of the sacred name, the yod, the hey, the vow, and the hey, with 4, the regeneration, the manifest, being placed in the center of the triangle, because that will be used to continue the second negative, passive, feminine quaternary. Yeah, so the second quaternary begins with 4 at the top. We have 4, 5, 6, and of course 7 is written in the middle, as was the case for 4 in the last triangle. And again, the theosophic addition of 7, 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, that's 28. 2 plus 8 is 10, and 1 plus 0 is 1. I do want to say, though, the triangle is depicted upwards just for the sake of reading, but as you will see here, when these two join, the passive is placed upside down. The septenary is represented by two triangles united. This would, sorry, I lost my train of thought. This would be represented with a, what's that called? It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll remember it in a minute. The septenary is represented by two triangles united. This is the basis for the alchemical sign fire, which is an up triangle, and the alchemical sign for water, which is a down triangle. With the basic concept now understood, I will next show you how the biblical creation week follows this pattern. So, the septenary is this, this symbol which has been referred to by many names. Now they call it the Star of David, which is not the original name of it. This is as a matter of fact, a joining of two. What's the I'm lost for words right now. I can't remember. It is the intersection of two, basically like 3D shapes. I didn't prepare with the words, but I will get those in a moment for you. Just for the sake of showing you how this continues, we could do this again. This would form the second septenary, beginning at 7, because the first one ended at 7. So the next one would begin with 7, 8, 9, and 10. That would form the next positive ternary, quaternary. And then it would end at 10 and continue. 10, 11, 12, 13. And so the next septenary would span 7 through 13. And it could be done again, beginning at 13 and ending at 19. We're not going to go too crazy into all of the points about the septenary. That'll be for another video, but I just want to show you why this is important. And now I'm going to actually show you how this is very clearly shown in the book of Genesis. So Genesis chapter 1 in the creation week. So the first day of creation, God creates light and darkness. The second day of creation, he creates the firmament and the waters. On the third day of creation, the land and the sea, along with the vegetation. And then here is this 4. And you'll notice the color coding. On day 4, God creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. But what is important and interesting is that day 4 is the creation of what are called the luminaries. The luminaries, as far as I understand it, and I will show you a definition for those in a moment, the luminaries, along with the sun, the moon, and the stars are often known as luminaries. And so what I'm trying to kind of show here is that on day 4, again, remember 4 is that kind of that linking. It ends the first series and it begins the next series. So on day 4, you notice you have now timekeeping. God even says, let these be for signs and for keeping time, essentially. So what's happening on day 4 is that now that the earth and all the things on the earth that are created, now time can pass. Now days can happen. Now cycles have been established, passing of time and cycles established. Okay, let's continue. Day 5, God creates the sea creatures and the birds. Day 6, God creates the land animals and humans. And of course, on day 7, God rests on the Sabbath. So, on day 1, because we know 1 is an active, we know 4 is an active regeneration. So, on day 1, God creates light and dark. On day 4, he creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. And all of those together constitute the luminaries, which allow the passing of time and cycles. But notice how the passing of time is also dependent on light and darkness, that original duality. And then you'll notice that on day 2 and day 5, we have a little bit of a correspondence. God creates the firmament and the waters, and then on day 5, he creates the sea creatures and the birds. And of course, on day 3 and day 6, he creates the land and the sea, and he creates the land, animals, and humans. And so you notice that 2 and 5, 3 and 6 almost have a little bit of a connection, because he's first creating on day 2 the location, and then on day 5 he's filling that location with creatures and life. On day 3 he's creating the land and the sea, and then on day 6 he's filling it with life. And of course, day 7, rest. What is rest? Rest is this idea of it really encodes a cycle. So to rest, you have to have something to rest from. In this case, that is creation. So the cycle of creation, the septenary, he now completes and rests on the 7th day, but that is dependent on there being day and night, sun, moon, and stars to keep time. The idea that God has a day of rest, the Sabbath day of rest, is dependent on there being a concept of days, meaning there is a concept of day and night, and there needs to be something to keep the time, the luminaries, to say, hey, today is the 7th day, not the 6th day. Okay? So just to kind of recap this, we'll go through it one more time. The yod element, the fire, day 1 is light. The water, day 2 is the firmament. The air, or the vowel, is day 3, land and vegetation. The second hay, end of day 4, end of the first series, is the earth is complete as a system with the luminaries to keep time. That is the active element for the next quaternary. So the yod now becomes the fire, the luminaries as the active organizing principle. That's very important. The luminaries organize the system into days, cycles, with day 5 being the water, the hay, water and air creatures. Day 6, the vowel, the air. Also, air is commonly associated with intelligence. So the earth creatures, obviously man and humans. And finally, day 7, the rest and the Sabbath completion. And so the creation week is a perfect encapsulation of the principles of the septenary, and even the principles of the tetragrammaton and the quaternary, that special relationship between 3 and 4. You'll find that actually all of the numbers 0 to 10 really are foundational. So here we go, the luminaries. We're not going to focus too much on this, but I did want to give you an actual definition so you have something to work off of. In the Hebrew, mayor, I believe is how you say that, luminaries. Also in the plural, let's see, properly, a luminous body or a luminary, light as an element, figuratively, brightness or cheerfulness, like a chandelier, a bright light. And then in the Greek word phoster, light, illuminator, an illuminator, a luminary, brilliancy. So a lot of times these will point to stars and sources of light. Okay, so where this gets interesting is what's known as the Little Genesis, or the Book of Jubilees. The Book of Jubilees really has a lot to say about 7 and the way that the septenary cycles are used for timekeeping. So the Book of Jubilees is a rewritten account of history spanning creation to the legislation on Sinai, claiming supreme authority as an esoteric tradition. It purports to be a direct revelation from God to Moses on Mount Sinai, dictated by the angel of the presence. Key points. First, structural law. The entire system is chronologically rigid and heptatic, which means base 7. The Jubilee cycle. History is segmented by the Jubilee period, defined symmetrically as 49 years, which is 7 year weeks of 7 years. A year week is just 7 years. Calendar dogma. Time is enslaved to a mandatory 364-day solar year, 52 weeks exactly. This refusal of astronomical reality is necessary because this division of days is ordained on the heavenly tables. So 1 week year is, I also refer to it as a sabbatical year. It is 7 years. So if I say a sabbatical year or 1 week year, that is a period of 7 years. And a jubilee period. A jubilee is defined as 7 week years, or 7 times 7 years, 49 years. Interesting to notice that the Catholic Church still does celebrate jubilees, and I am not making any connections to the Catholic jubilees. This is just from the Book of Jubilees, in reference to the law of 7 and the septenary. So in the future, maybe I'll look into that more, but not at the moment. Okay, so to wrap this up, I just want to show you how the Jubilee cycle really encodes this. But this is more or less just to kind of elucidate a point. It's not something you really need to worry about or remember. So, the Yod years. These are the years of the Jubilee period, or the 49 years that correspond to the active, the Yod. So those would be years 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 28, 31, 34, 37, 40, 43, 46. Those are 16 years, which, remember the quaternary, the Tetragrammaton, 16 is 4 times 4. Okay, so the years that correspond to He, or the water element, those are years 2, 5, 8, 11, etc. I'm not going to read them all. The vowel years are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Now, here is probably the most, I guess, part that I have to kind of explain well. So the second He, the final set of years, they have those braces around them because if, let's use 4 as an example. If 4 is both the end of one series and the beginning of another, we have to account for it playing dual roles. So you notice that 1, the first year itself, is not part of the second He, because 1 was never the end, 1 was only the start. So 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, those are as their ending counterpart, not their beginning counterpart. And notice that 49 also does not have braces because 49th year is the end. And so these each have 16 years. That is 49 years. And then upon the completion of the 49th year, on that 50th year, that would be a Jubilee year. So one Jubilee period is 49 years. Upon the completion of the 49th year, it would be a Jubilee year. But that would also be the first year of the new Jubilee. Yeah, upon the completion of year 49, year 50 becomes a Jubilee year. And guys, that is the basic idea of the septenary law. I hope you guys were able to understand this. If not, feel free to leave comments with your questions, and I will answer those. And I will also make all of these presentations and whatnot available in the description, so you guys can review these and all the sources you need to understand this if it's something that you're interested in. So thank you guys. All right, guys. So I think now that we have established all of the groundwork, I can show you the meaning of this symbol, the absolute key to occult science. This was the frontispiece for uh, Tarot of the Bohemians by Papus. And I wanted to explain this symbol, but then I realized you would need to understand everything I've previously explained before you can comprehend the symbol. So he made this symbol as a part of the book where he explains everything I've explained to you, as it is the foundation for the tarot deck. And so this symbol is designed to encode everything that I have shown you. So first we'll look at the top section. Notice a few things. Notice that you have four, the quaternary, the law of four. Those are your four suits. Same thing in the American Western playing cards. Those are the same idea. They're just different symbols. So you have the four suits. You have three Greek letters: alpha, omega, and tau. Those are T, A, and O. You have the intersection of the light and dark, male and female, the septenary in the middle with the tetragrammaton in the middle. And you have the four beasts from Revelation. You have the eagle, the Leo lion sign, the ox, and then the water, I believe, corresponds to the angel or the man. These are the symbols that Papus used on the original design, so I just recreated this according to his specifications. So, first, we will take a look at the correspondences. So, the wands, which is the clubs in the American deck, that is the yod or the fire. That represents the archetypal world. The cups or the hearts, the hay, the water, that is the creative world. Swords, which are spades, is the vow or the air, the formative world. And finally, pentacles or diamonds, the second hay, the earth element, the material world. You have, again, the Tau cross, the alpha, and the omega. So the lion corresponds to the wands. The eagle corresponds to the cups. The angel, the man, corresponds to the swords or the spades. And the ox represents pentacles. Let me go ahead and just say this. There are a lot of different attributions that are out there, and this may not be the absolute one unique universal attribution. There are plenty of other systems which may swap the eagle and the angel. So in some systems, I have seen water correspond to man, and the air correspond to the eagle. I'm not necessarily sure which one is correct ultimately, but this is the way the symbol was created. And again, this symbol never really was explained in Papus' book. So this explanation is coming from me, the best I can actually understand this. So if there's something that you see differently than I do, I really would like to hear about it. So just leave a comment and let me know what you think. Okay, so you notice we have these numbers on the top, and if you look very closely, you will notice that the number 19 is deliberately missing. So we have 1 through 20 with 19 missing. It goes 18 to 20. On the bottom, you have the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, in Papus' design, he used the English alphabet, but I decided to use the Hebrew alphabet because I believe that the actual significance of the alphabet was that it had 22 characters, and that is, as you are about to see, important because 22 is a very sacred number. It has a lot of mystical significance. Even in the Book of Genesis, there are 22, I believe, distinct, different things created. So it's a very unique number for many reasons. The secret of the missing 19 is that the sun symbol on the center point of the key, it is at the center point of the key, as the sun being the center of the solar system. And I know people are going to get mad at me for that, but it is or it isn't. I don't care. It's the point of the symbol here that we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else right now. So the 19 is the sun card in the tarot deck. The 19th of the major arcana is the sun, and therefore the sun symbol is at the very centermost point. Okay. So the bottom section. First, you will notice that you'll have that missing row letter R. Now, past that point, you have your 7, the septenary, 7 major classical planets: the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. And then you will notice that we have that Trinity, that ternary law represented with the teeth of the key, Deus, Homo, Torah. That translates to God, man, and law. So now if we go back to the top section of the key, what's important to understand is that these 3, the tau, the alpha, and the omega, those are, if you notice, these are along the numerical stations, with rho being at the bottom. And so the meaning of that is that you have 1 through 20 at the top with 19 missing, which means you have 19 total numbers plus the 3 stations. So 19, alpha, omega, and tau, 20, 21, 22. And so what that means is that you have 22 numerical stations, or that corresponds to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet on the bottom section of the keyring. I'll say that again. At the top, you have numbers 1 through 20 with 19 missing, which means you have 19 total numbers, plus the 3 stations. The 19 numbers plus the 3 stations, that's 22 stations for the top half. The bottom half has 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Also, you will notice that if you go around the ring, the tau, T, A, R, O, and T, which is tarot, but even more so, the tau at the top does represent both the beginning and the end, because you start at T, T-A-R-O-T, and it goes full circle. The tau is the beginning and the end of the word tarot, which means the wheel of law. So tarot, aside from the deck of cards, means Torah and Rota, or wheel of law. Okay, and you will also notice that we have this right hand. Let's see. I wonder if there's a way that I can. get a pointer. I thought there was, but I don't know how to do it right now. Either way, the right angle in the center is numbers 1 to 10, and that is also indicative of the square in Freemasonry. Obviously, you know, the morality on the square, etc. So also it represents that the numbers 1 through 10 are symbolized in the sacred name, the Tetragrammaton. And so here, let me go to the next so we have a better look. Yeah, I wonder how I can get a pointer. That would be very nice, but I don't know how to do it. Well, either way, yeah. So you have numbers 1 through 18 and 20, 3 stations, 22 stations numerically, 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. You have the Tetragrammaton. You have the masculine and feminine, the septenary. You have the right angle. You have the 4 suits, which correspond to the 4 beasts of Revelation. You have the 7 classical planets, with the sun at the center of the entire design. And then you have the 3 teeth, which represent the ternary, the Trinity. Deus Homo Torah means God, man, and law. The red, the white, and the blue. Also, you can see that that is the center of the keyring. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I forgot. I don't believe so. So, that is my interpretation of this design. There's probably other ways to read it, and so if there's something you see that I don't, please feel free to share it with me. I'd love to hear it and just bounce some ideas around. And so, with that being said, guys, I greatly appreciate you sticking with me through this, and I hope you found something profound. If not, feel free to ask questions and clarify anything you don't understand, or just let me know if there's something you know that I don't know. So, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.